Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, back for Enfuegotainment and more of my Crimbus coverage that I have been doing. This is going to be another double down, rapido review talking about two films that they're each featured on Shudder right now, but I must admit, with a very congested Christmas time in hell to be specific, that we did on the horror show, having finally gotten around to watching both of these overseas films from Europe, I just knew I had to discuss them and give some thoughts, because I don't really think either of these are horror movies, despite them residing on Shudder. And so I'm going to be giving some brief thoughts about Rare Exports and Deadly Games, and I know that one has gone by various different names, that particular French film from 1989 that has some similarities to Home Alone, but neither of these are like along the lines of A Black Christmas or even Krampus or anything of that nature. So let's talk first and foremost with the older film of these two, which is none other than Deadly Games, and it is a French 1989 film, and it's about this super tech-savvy kid who, his mother seemingly is the one who is around. Father, I'm trying to remember if they actually give any reasoning as far as like divorce or if he's passed away or whatever the hell it may be, but the most notable relationship, even more so than his mother's, who works at like this department store and is like this business savvy person who is seeing a new guy. His relationship with, first he has like a buddy who's there for a few scenes and stuff, but really one of the biggest cruxes of this is this wonderful relationship with his grandfather, who is kind of losing his sight. And yet the tech savviness, unfortunately, orchestrates a bad sort of situation. And I had no idea that in like the late 80s and the early 90s it wasn't quite like the internet, because the internet wasn't even really around by that particular point, at least like commonly. But over in Europe, there was like a telephone message sending service in text format. And so this kid is like in a chat room before chat rooms are kind of a thing almost, and he gets to talking with this guy who's a down on his luck dude, borderline sociopath of sorts, and he ends up getting, being this older dude, he ends up getting a job as a Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, and he ends up getting fired after a kid flips out on him and is like, "You're not really Santa," and so, he shows his true colors, and he gets let go right then and there, and he in turn tracks down, goes after kid, and it's less about like setting tons of traps and stuff. It's really more so about that kid's like security know-how and stuff. And once this evil Santa Claus gets on the premises, just trying to thwart him, protect his grandfather, and this kid with his like late 80s like mullet Rambo sort of look that we see at the very beginning of the film, where he's imagining himself like rolling around and just in this heat of battle. It's really fun. And I enjoyed this movie thoroughly. It was most definitely, I don't know if I would quite go as far as saying I liked it more than Home Alone, because that is the nostalgia factor 100% for me. Now granted, maybe the stakes were a little bit higher in this, because you do think that this Santa Claus could potentially kill the grandfather without saying where it goes, because there's some dire stuff in this from time to time, but it's really more so like thriller comedy, but it's not full-on slapstick like you see in Home Alone. Home Alone is just that sort of very elevated, especially with like the black and white film that appears in both versions of it. I like this French kid, but unfortunately, Macaulay, Culkin, who I saw as a kid myself, less than a year later in 1990. I guess this French director went after the peeps behind Home Alone, and he was like, they ripped off my movie, but they were kind of concurrently in development. So, hey, it is what it is, but this one did see some significant praise, and I have to make mention of the fact that, I forget, Bonnie something, god damn it, but she's saying, "I need a hero," and Total Eclipse of the Heart and all that stuff, so she does a Christmas song in this that is badass, and I immediately had to run up to my TV when I was watching it on Shudder and like Shazam the thing, and I'm like, maybe it's It's not Bonnie Raitt. God damn it, I can't think of it. Please correct me in the comments below. I'm sure it'll come to me right after I get done talking about this. But yeah, man, I mean, bottom line, if you are fine with subtitles and just seeing a very interesting snapshot of a film that was obviously ahead of its time from both a technological standpoint and from a thematic standpoint, then Deadly Games, or its various other names, but AMC owns Shudder now. Shudder, I think, is $4.99 a month. I don't even think you can VOD this anywhere. I know they put out a deluxe edition because this had been out of print for so goddamn long. People had like bootlegged VHSs of it because it was just one of those that never even got a DVD release. I don't even think it got a proper VHS release over here in the States. But long story short, Deadly Games was very entertaining, and I'm glad that I finally got around to watching it. Now, let us briefly discuss Número Dos, the second film here in the Days of Crimbus, approaching the holiday, and that is Rare Exports. Rare Exports is a movie from Finland that basically explores the secret history of Santa Claus, and it's a rather dark one. So I don't think it really is making like a Krampus connotation necessarily, but it's at least that sort of darkness that, yeah, he was more a nefarious guy who was more so about punishing with things far beyond coal the bad kids as opposed to rewarding the good ones. And so the film starts out with these British diggers who are trying to like get down into this frozen over cave, which has been fortified seemingly to try to either protect something from I don't know, basically it's like, were we trying to, stop other people from getting in, or to stop what was within from getting out? It's that sort of old trope. And what is trying to get out, or could presumably, is in fact not just Santa Claus, but a whole Santa Claus-esque bit of I guess you would describe them as elves or maybe Santa's helpers, but they're definitely not little helpers because they all look like Santa Claus. And this is a discovery that is made very specifically by a research-heavy kid who, fascinatingly enough, is also missing a parent. Just like in Deadly Games, kid is missing a father. In this one, in Rare Exports, kid is missing his mother, and it's really just him and his dad. And they're living in an impoverished state, and it's very, or conditioned to be a little more specific as opposed to using a very broad term like that. But early on, him and this friend of his are blaming themselves for having tore through this fence and thinking that they allowed the death of all of these reindeer, and the reindeer are actually used for food in this particular area of very just frozen over, cold as fuck Europe. And yeah, it just really kind of, as the mystery is unraveled and you start to figure out, okay, Santa is presumably not only bad, he could be like, haunting this kid's window outside of his home and all this other stuff. There is death that happens in this movie, but it is far more, in my estimation, a fantasy film in the regard that it's not full-on Christmas horror. It just really isn't for me. Yes, there are a couple characters who die, but it really is more of the comedic fantasy variety. And plus, I mean, I don't know when we would have the chance to even discuss it on the horror show, but nonetheless, the performance of the main kid, he's got the older friend who's, like got the pierced ear and kind of a bully and whatnot to him, even though they are friends and their fathers are seemingly friends and stuff like that. But really, it is about just this kid really rising to the occasion, especially when some of these Santa's helpers start getting out. And props to the guys for that performance. They basically all resemble, like, as opposed to being like fat and jolly and had lots of those Christmas cookies and milk and stuff like that, they are like bone thin, and they are volatile and potentially murderous and stuff like that. And just the way this younger, more timid kid rises to the occasion. He's like hanging from a goddamn helicopter at one particular point, man. I mean, he's even getting getting more ballsy than some of the more trained like law enforcement adults and stuff that end up assisting in the process. And so yeah, this was actually based on 2 different short films. I think one came out in 2003, and then there was a sequel that came out in 2005. And I don't want to spoil what the name actually implies, because they don't really reveal the pertinence of it until the end of the film with what they decide to do with this basically army of like Santa-looking Santa's helpers. And yeah, that's about all that I can say. This was another one that I enjoyed it, but I see it pop up on so many peeps like their favorite you know, holiday films, not just like of any sort of fantasy and you know, maybe borderline horror variety, but I did not feel this was a horror movie, really. I mean, is Legend a horror movie? Is The Lord of the Rings a horror movie? I don't know. It's got some of those same, at least, okay, fantasy can have unsettling, kind of creepy moments, but that doesn't mean it's a horror film, and so that's why I contend that I'm cool to review this here, despite whatever ire I may get from my buddy Cecil. Love you, man. Merry Crimbus and whatnot. Murray Crimbus. Bill Murray Crimbus. But yeah, I think maybe the hype machine, as I all too often talk about on this show, and even mention on the horror show as well, the burden of expectation was high in this, and despite especially enjoying the father-son dynamic, it's beautiful locale. You know, just the frozen tundra in the area and stuff is very beautiful. It is well shot. This felt very little like a just smaller, low-budget sort of indie. I do feel like they had at least a decent amount of millions to spend on this and stuff, so it didn't feel like an amateur, shorter sort of less polished situation. And I think that it's always helpful when you have a couple dry runs or proof of concept short attempts before making a feature and dealing with the same subject matter, that the finished product in the lengthier version is going to be better. But still, I didn't love it. I liked it though. I definitely liked both of these movies, but I wasn't as over the moon. And so yeah, even though I would say this is like 3 to 3.5, I gotta reel it back in. I gotta say 3. You know, so both of these were bueno movies, both rare exports and deadly games as it has come to be known. So 3 out of 5 for both of these. They are both streaming on Shudder, but well, I enjoyed both, and they're both drastically different. I mean, a French film from 1989 and a Finnish film from 2010. They both have great holiday spirit about them, and they will get you in that proverbial mood, but I'm covering it here once again, final word on it, because of the fact that I didn't particularly feel like either of these were full-fledged horror films, but they are still accomplished, impressive, and you might just like them a lot more so than I did, even though I did enjoy both of them significantly and seriously. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find more on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on the YouTubies, where a like, a share, a subscribe is greatly appreciated. The only other film that is kind of close to this in vibe, I guess, is Fat Man. I mean, maybe Alien Xmas, but that's that's animated. I've already reviewed both of those films, the Mel Gibson and the Netflix original from the Kyotos brothers. That's right, the guys behind Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So I don't know. I mean, art is subjective, as I always contend, and so if you think both of these movies are way better than I did, please let me know in the comments below. And there's lots of other holiday stuff that you can check out in all of this Crimbus coverage. And if you like full-on spooktacular stuff that's actually not really holiday related at all, but it's what we're doing on The Horror Show, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel, my main destination on the YouTubes. We did something called Christmas Time in Hell, complete, comprehensive Hellraiser coverage, and all of the movies, books, the comics. I mean, yeah, we did a significant deep dive, myself, Robert Duell, and Cecil Laird. So yes, jump over there, give some love as well if you want something that doesn't have anything to do with the holidays, but is still just a cohesive bit of coverage. So check that out, and that's going to be the end of the proceedings today until we get a little more festive mañana. So I've been Jaime En Fuego, y'all have been Rat Status, and until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers, viewers alike, say thank you for this bit of palaver you spent with me today. If you made it this far, hopefully we share more of it sooner rather than later. And until then, stay home and watch more streaming stuff and subscribe to Shudder, man. I mean, for the price of like one VOD rental, you can watch their massive array of awesomeness.